You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith. It's great to be back. I know I haven't released an episode in about a month or so, but just with the COVID thing slowing everybody down, there's just not been that many releases, and of course there's been bugger all tours. But I do have this for you. Andy Kite is from a band from Adelaide, Australia. If you're listening overseas, it's the capital of South Australia, in fact. And Andy's in a band called Descend To Acheron. The reason for the chat with him is to promote his rather good new album with the band. The Transience of Flesh is the name of that one. You can check that out now on streaming services. And of course, I always implore anybody listening to support the artist by buying the CD, buying physical copy, whether it be a t-shirt, vinyl if they've got that. But, you know, if you're streaming it and you enjoy it, do try to support the band, of course. Andy, it turns out, is probably the preeminent producer of extreme and heavy metal bands in South Australia. So it was wonderful to talk to him about that. So for sure, we do talk about the Transience of Flesh, but I think a lot of the conversation here is dedicated to our shared love of extreme and heavy metal, and what better subject matter is there to talk about, frankly. The other thing too, this conversation was conducted over Skype, and I was outside around my campfire because we only get about 5 or 6 weeks of cold weather here in Queensland where I'm living, and I thought, why not go outside, have some Jack Daniels. Had my daughter beside me. She was on her iPad tapping away, as she tends to do. She's really loving that bloody iPad. Don't know whether that's a good or a bad thing, but I had the campfire next to me so you can hear that snap, crackle and pop from that, bringing you into the campfire, dear listener. There you go. So without any further delay, here he is, Andy Kite from Descend To Acheron. Andy, it's Andrew Mackay-Smith calling for our chat. How's things?
Yeah, not bad. Yeah, good. Yourself?
Mate, plug it away. I'll paint the scene for you. I'm outside in the backyard. I've got the fire pit going. My daughter's sitting around it eating marshmallows. It's about it's a balmy 12 degrees or something like that here on the Goldies, so that's as cold as about it'll get for us this time of night at the least anyway, mate. So I guess you could say, mate, I'm living the dream to a point.
Yeah, nice. That sounds great. Yeah, nice.
Yeah. What's the day held for you so far?
So what's that? Sorry, I haven't got it much again. So what was that?
Yeah, right. What's the day held for you so far? Been working, that sort of thing?
No, my band had to postpone today for the studio, so I ended up just doing a whole bunch of odds and ends around the house, mounting TVs and that kind of stuff. So yeah,
the
stuff
domestic stuff.
A long time ago, just catching up. Yeah, catching up on my life when when I get a few seconds.
How's things been going for the band overall, though? Of course, COVID-19 has meant that extraordinary releases like the one that you guys have put out, the Transience of Flesh, you aren't able to play live, mate. So, I guess I'll kick things off by asking, how on earth do you promote a release like this, which would live and breathe and would mutate beyond, it would just mate, it just cut right through to the audience in the live arena, mate. But without being able to do that, how on earth do you promote an album like this?
With great difficulty. that's just digital revenue, digital streams. That's the only way of doing it. Like just promote the Bandcamp and Spotify and all that. And our CD launch and interstate shows and stuff all got canned. So it definitely, the sales have been okay still,
yeah, sure,
surprisingly, which is great. The support's still been really positive and people are still buying it, which is great. So, but
absolutely,
but it's not as much as if we could get out there and show people what we're all about.
I bet. Sorry, I made that point fairly clumsily before, but I mean that's the point. What you're playing here is brutal death metal, and the live arena is where this comes across best. Of course, it's a great album, and we'll talk about that in more detail, of course. But, mate, I just feel for you guys at the moment, as I feel for all of the extreme metal bands out there and fans like myself who aren't able to witness what you guys will do on stage. Because, mate, it's our outlet. Having a few bevies, going into the Valley or wherever, Brisbane and the Valley here, or whatever the equivalent there is in Adelaide, and watching a killer band put on a live performance and just feeling good about life. We're denied that at the moment.
Yeah, it sucks as well because we waited for literally years from recording the EP up until we released it because we didn't have a live band. and we didn't want to just release it to no one and not be able to play. So we spent a long time finding the right members and getting really tight, and then right as we have the launch and everything set and release dates and premieres for the clips and whatever, then it all fell apart. So it just meant because these guys that I'm jamming with now in Descend To Acheron are the tightest musicians that I've ever been in a band with. So our live shows can really bring across what we're trying to do. So it's a real kick in the guts.
Well, we'll keep the faith, because it is. Look, it's a great album, and look, the first when I listen to it, the album that is, the first band that comes to mind is Cannibal Corpse. So please take that as a compliment. That's not just a baseless generic comparison. I mean, I've been a lifelong, extreme metal fan, but you guys have really got that Eric Rutan guitar sound, and that's the key, down pat in the production, and especially that guttural roar that you do at the very beginning reminds me so much, in a good way, of Devoured by Vermin. You know, and overall, you guys, cool. You guys are just a cohesive, no bullshit death metal outfit, no frills, offering extreme metal fans exactly what they want, which is very well written, very well recorded, expertly produced death metal. And that's really how I sum up the album. But does that meet your summary as well of how you might describe the album?
No, definitely. We're obviously quite heavily influenced because we're older lads. We're not spring chickens. We grew up with Cannibal Corpse, Deicide, all the Suffocation.
Now you're talking.
Huge,
beautiful.
Monstrosity, bands like that.
Monstrosity.
So, we're all heavily.
Monstrosity.
I love Monstrosity.
I've had a chat to Lee Harrison, actually. He's one of my favourite interview subjects ever, I've got to say. Sorry to interrupt, but
nice.
I love Monstrosity. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Just, they're a riff band, and I fucking love that because, I like the riffs and stuff and the memorable aspect of the older school death metal, but I love how dynamic and fast the new bands are as well. So it's kind of, they're just trying to sort of take what we like from all the different genres and sort of, bring it all together into one package, that we dig. Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me then that I'm really identifying with your music, given the bands that you're talking about. Because if you're talking, as you've done, about Deicide, Monstrosity, Cannibal Corpse, Suffocation, I mean, these are the OGs. These are the guys that really have influenced the current crop. And I'm so glad that you mentioned... The reason, sorry I interrupted you before, was because I'm just so happy to hear an Australian musician talk about Monstrosity. Because bugger all people know about them, even that they're death metal fans. And I'm like, how can you not know the Floridian originals, Monstrosity and Lee Harrison specifically? I mean, the guy is a bona fide legend, but he just does not get enough love. That guy is so good. He plays drums and writes the music in Monstrosity, and then he goes and writes the songs and plays guitar and Terrorizer.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Unbelievable.
We just definitely want to have that memorable aspect like those bands did in those days. There's so many awesome riffs from those early death metal albums, and I kind of feel like as good as modern death metal is, and I love a lot of it, it's not as memorable a lot of the time, and I kind of wanted to try and bridge that gap.
Well, you and I sound like, as I say, we're from the same school. We're probably of the same vintage. I'm 42. And when we were growing up, a Morbid Angel album or a Cannibal Corpse album or an Obituary album, Monstrosity album, these were actual events. I can remember whole episodes of my life wrapped around these albums coming out.
Yeah, absolutely, the Deicide's first album was the first death metal album I ever bought. So that changed my life, that album.
You're talking about the self-titled debut. And I bought Covenant the same day, actually, Morbid Angel Covenant. So I was a little bit later coming to it because I lived up in the country and no one around me listened to metal. Nirvana was the heaviest thing that people listened to. And I went into the second-hand bookshop in the Barossa Valley where I was going to school. And I saw the Deicide front cover in this second-hand bookshop, and I was like, oh shit, I'm buying that. And everything changed, man. Absolutely. We've got a similar story then, because I'll never forget. I'm just writing a book at the moment, actually, and I'm talking about a lot of this sort of stuff. And I'll never forget when I first saw it, not heard, but saw Deicide's Legion, the cover.
Yep.
The CD sitting there, and I'm thinking, this shit looks like it should be banned. Like, you know, in my mind, I was only like 13 or 14 at the time, but it looked so impossibly evil. It looked like the CD couldn't actually hold the evil riffs that the Hoffman brothers had actually composed and put on it, you know. And, of course, I bought it. And it was...
Yeah, absolutely.
It took me, and no shit, it took me about 15 years to wrap my head around everything the band were doing on that. It took that long, because it probably took up until I heard what Ralph Santola did on The Stench of Redemption for me to understand what the Hoffman brothers were doing on the earlier stuff. You know, there's stuff there, the latter stuff there, like... what's it? I don't mind Incinerating. That gets a lot of shit. But the one after that, sorry, I can't... In Torment in Hell, that gets a lot of shit. And same with Scars of the Crucifix. That does as well. And I kind of sort of understand why it does. They were a bit pedestrian. But when that band got Deicide, got Ralph in that band, oh, holy shit. Didn't they just recast the Die?
Yeah, it was a totally different band, much more melodic, and Ralph Santola's solos were very melodic. There's none of that crazy, like, just, you know, insanity of the early solos. It was just almost noise. That chaotic aspect was definitely missing. Yeah, Ralph Santola was definitely too nice. I don't know, too trained. I think maybe, you know.
Well, you know how he was introduced to the band. I'll tell you this: how he was introduced to the band was. Whoever was the principal soloist out of the two Hoffman brothers, sorry, I can't remember, but one of the two of them actually sought him out to get guitar lessons, and he was that good. He ended up replacing them. I mean, to me, like I've had a couple of chats to Ralph before he obviously goes without saying before he passed away, but it was so sad when he passed away. Because that guy was such a sweetheart of a guy. And I've talked about him a lot on the podcast, so long-time listeners are going to have to forgive me for going on another Ralph tangent. But, look, he was just a legend, that guy. He was a great human being. I was talking to him about bringing him down here for some guitar clinics. He was a rock and heavy metal fan to his core, that guy. And the fact that he was in Deicide was just one of those things. You know, that was just the band he ended up in. But he did so much killer work. And I think he reinvigorated Deicide. You know, without him, I don't know whether Deicide would even be around now. I think they'd just be a classic death metal band as opposed to a contemporary death metal band.
I don't even know. I haven't actually even followed the new side. I don't even know who's replaced him. Obviously, he's not around anymore. But, I have no idea who's even in Deicide anymore. I've kind of lost track of that. Well, I'll tell you,
they had John English from Monstrosity for a while, and he recorded the last album, the name of which escapes me now, the one from 2019, and that album had its moments, there's no doubt, but it still lacks quite a bit, to be honest with you. You know, it's not got that killer, crushing, classic Deicide that they bought and that they had originally, and that Ralph helped reinvigorate them through by The Stench of Redemption and In Torment in Hell, and it's sort of there, but the English's guitar playing is fantastic. His soloing is absolutely epic, very similar to Ralph's actually. But I remember having a chat to Lee not long after that, Lee Harrison, and asking him if he was going to stick around in Monstrosity or whether or not Deicide was his primary gig, and I don't think either of us knew at the time that he'd stepped out of Deicide. So, to your exact point, he's still in Monstrosity. I have no idea, and I could not tell you who the guitarists are in Deicide, but look, you hear things through the grapevine, and that is that Glenn is an extraordinarily difficult person to work with. Who knows? I don't know, because I've never spoken to the guy or interviewed him. But look, I've heard things through the grapevine, and look, with the amount of membership changeover that they've had, there's got to be some, truth to that.
It was around about here. Actually, it was exactly here that the phone call cut out. So I called him back, and we continued the conversation. Let's get back into it. Here he is, Andy from Descend To Acheron.
Look, we've talked a lot about the background there. It's clear that you're a dyed-in-the-wool death metal fan, which is so great. I love talking to people like yourself. So, for you guys, when you decided to become a collective, and you mentioned there early on that playing live wasn't, paraphrasing here, of course, but you didn't do a lot of it because the band wasn't quite a collective yet. But how did you guys, meet and greet and get together and decide that you wanted to do this album?
Yeah, basically, Pete and I, Pete is the lead guitarist in the band and principal songwriter. We were both in a local band called In the Burial together. And in 2013-ish, I think, we both decided to leave. And because we'd been working on a bit of other stuff already, or we were getting ideas together for a new thing already. So yeah, we made the decision to leave. And we wrote the EP within a couple of months, and just decided that we'd try and get the recording started, because I run a recording studio, so made it a little bit easier. And we were just like, who do we want to get to play on this? We just want to play with people that we really respect and we love their playing. So that's why we decided that why not get Dave Haley to do the drums.
Shit, he's the man.
So he's the man. Like, I've been watching him since I was a teenager and just tearing it up. So I was like, I'd fucking love to work with Dave Haley. So we just got Dave in. And then when it came to bass player, a guy that I'd worked with a bunch of times in the studio, a guy called Matty Phillips. I just love his playing, love his personality on stage. It's a lot of fun, just heaps of charisma, and just nails the bass, man. Just plays it so accurate, so hard. It's awesome. And I was like, man, Pete knew him as well. We're like, we got to get this guy to play on the EP. And at that point, we just wanted to get people to play on the EP. And then he ended up joining, so that was great. And then, finding the extra guitarist and drummer were the tricky things. That's why. So we had us three pretty early on, and then, it took a while to lock in Kieran, who's also in Meth Leopard and Power Chuck, and he was in Truth Corroded for a long time.
Hilarious.
Every single drummer in Adelaide's been in Truth Corroded at some point, I think. Luckily we snagged him. And then, Dave, who plays guitar in my other band, Dave Hawkins, he plays guitar in another band that I'm in called Maniacal, which is a kind of more thrashy, groovy, deathy kind of thing from Port Pirie. He came on board last year and sort of completed the lineup. So, I'd recorded the Maniacal albums, and then when their singer left, I ended up just joining. I was doing some live shows for fun with them, and I just really dug what they were doing, and they were cool guys, and they were super tight live, and I was like, I could see myself doing this, full time. So, that's basically the story of it all.
Okay, so you're the driving influence and the driving force behind it, and you mentioned there also too that you've got a studio. Okay, and I think I saw that in the email. The name of the email, or your email handle, if you like, when you sent that through. So you must be the epicenter of death metal in Adelaide, I take it.
Yeah, I do record a lot of bands in Adelaide. Yeah, the studio's been running for about 15 years now. And there's not heaps of people in Adelaide that I haven't worked with, like in the metal community now, which is awesome. I love my job. And I get to see these great musicians firsthand. And obviously not everyone, is a great musician, and that's cool. People have other things to do with their lives as well, I understand. But I get to see the best of the best as well, and I'm like, dude, I've got to be in a band with that guy someday. And so when it comes to getting a band together, I know the ins and outs of all the musos, which is a huge heads up. Like, I don't have to sort of go through that whole feeling out process of months of jamming, to see if it's going to work or whatever, because, we already have a working relationship beforehand. So, it's great.
It might be hard for you to answer this question, but of course, look, I'm a relative normie, to be honest with you, in that I do my podcasting, but I tend to play in, I only play in covers bands, which usually means that I'm playing Kylie Minogue songs, Olivia Newton-John, this sort of thing. So I'm not really that connected to a metal scene per se as a musician, but from your musician's perspective, would you rate the Adelaide metal scene? Would you say it's a healthy scene and really contributing to the Australian scene overall?
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt with that. We have some amazing talent in Adelaide. Unfortunately, not a lot of it gets out of Adelaide. Keeping members is super hard because shows are always hopelessly small here. there's more bands than fans by a long shot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Unless Slipknot come to town, then there's 10,000 people in bloody metal shirts all of a sudden. But yeah, the local scene, it's really small, and every drummer that's worth their salt is in at least 3 bands or 4 bands. Like I think Kieran's in 4 bands. And he keeps getting asked all the time to join more. So yeah, it's really hard, but some crazy talented like Freedom of Fear, Decidia, Stargazer, Mournful Congregation, and like the list is huge. And these are Meth Leopard themselves. They play overseas, fucking more than they play Adelaide. It's crazy. Like we have a huge talent pool here. It's just not a lot of them get out. And if they do get out of Adelaide, they usually go straight overseas and don't worry about Australia because it's just so hard to tour Australia. Yeah.
I know for my listeners overseas, people can see Australia on a map, but how many capital cities are there here? Like legitimate capital cities I'm talking about. Let's go through the list. Perth, Melbourne, Sydney, Adelaide, Brisbane, and maybe Hobart. Because Darwin is smaller than Cairns. So with all due respect to any listeners from Darwin, it's not really a capital city that can support the scene.
Well, Alice Springs, as a metal band, Alice Springs is the place to play in Northern Territory.
There's a few from there.
I've never been to Darwin myself.
Yeah, there's Southwest.
I've recorded those guys. Yeah, I do a lot of work with Pirate, the guy that runs the Black Reef up there. He also runs Black and Open Air. With the help of a lot of people. Obviously, Black and Open Air is a massive Yeah. So I go up there and I do a lot of work for him up there. I've recorded heaps of albums up there. I was actually on the phone to him a couple of days ago about the possibility of getting back up there pretty soon to do some more work. So, Alice Springs is huge for metal bands. Like, they have some awesome stuff going on up there. Not same problem as Adelaide, Bay. Not enough fans, more bands than fans, unfortunately, and not enough good drummers. Actually, one of
but it's just killer. It's just killer that such a small town, which is really what it is in a global sense. I get us connected to technology. It's an Australian city or Australian town after all, so you got all the mod cons there. But there's an indigenous metal band there, Southwest Desert Metal, I think is the name of the band, and like from the sound of things, Southeast. My apologies, but you've recorded them, and isn't that killer totally. that I've always said that metal is a universal language. Yeah,
absolutely. And they're really talented too. Those guys, like they shred like some absolutely crazy solos and stuff. Like just so talented. Always really, really easy working with them because they just know, they just can play, And and I think they did like a big tour last year supporting Carnival all down the eastern states, playing to like huge places. And they've like, I was just watching a TV show, and I was like, I know that riff. What the hell is this riff? And it was actually one of their songs on this show that I was watching. And I was like, holy shit. It was just like, where the hell did that come from? It was pretty cool.
Yeah, they're a great band, actually. If you do talk to them, tell them to check their messages, because I messaged them about 8 months ago because I wanted to have a chat for the podcast, because it fascinates me how... Because heavy metal, this is the thing, everybody bangs on about bloody urban music and hip-hop and rap, and they say, that's the only universal language. Bullshit. I've spoken to people in bands in every continent on the planet. I've spoken to people from all backgrounds, all religious persuasions, social backgrounds as well, and it's all under the broader banner of it's all because of the broader banner of heavy metal. To me, Angelo Biafra from Dead Kennedys, he's the one who actually said this about 30 years ago. He's the one who said the only, I'm paraphrasing here, I won't quote him directly, but he said something around the lines of the only form of music that crosses all cultural, social, all of these boundaries that we have up around us at the moment, especially in this day and age, and this is a really important point, the only music that does it, death metal. He was very specific. He didn't say heavy metal, he said death metal. And I mean, he'd know. He's travelled. And I mean, he's a punk guy, right? So I mean, surely to goodness he'd be flying punk's flag as opposed to death metal's flag, which his band has inspired countless death metal bands, of course, because they're a fantastic band. Dead Kennedys, they're one of the first bands that I personally learned how to play the guitar lines for. Because you could learn them, they were fairly straightforward, but Mate, that's a hell of a band to learn the stuff off. You feel great learning Chicken Shit Conformist, the opening, the opening guitar strands to that. But I so love Jello for saying that, and for someone like yourself who's had that experience, and you're helping the bands now.
It's a very rewarding job. That's why I love it so much. Like I never dread going to work like a lot of people do. It's like there's always something cool to work on and cool people to hang out with, and laugh a hell of a lot, and just record some killer tunes. It's pretty awesome.
Hey, just talking about recording again, so with the album The Transience of Flesh, I mean, your vocal is just vicious on there. Congratulations on capturing that. So can you tell me how you captured your vocal that way?
Yeah. Just recorded it through a microphone, I generally generally sing about pretty much, because I'm not in a lot of bands that play and rehearse a lot, because the Maniacal guys are all from Peary, which is like a 2.5 hour drive away. The guys in Descend To Acheron are all over the shop around Adelaide, nowhere near each other, so we're not jamming and playing heaps. So for me, it's actually a bit of a struggle to get my voice up to that level where it's recordable again, because I just don't use it very often. So, it might be years in between me actually ever making a death metal sound.
Is that
so,
right?
Yeah, it's
okay.
just, once I... So there's definitely some amazing vocalists that I admire their technique and stuff, and I just don't have any of that. I just... I don't hurt myself when I do it, but... I don't have, people like, oh, do you do this technique or that technique? It's like, I don't know, man, I just go, roll, and then that's what comes out. And so I don't try to analyze it, and I don't, I've kind of learned not to push my voice where it doesn't want to go. Like, when I was in the Barrel, I was always trying to push my voice to be something that it couldn't do. So I've just, basically just get comfortable with where my voice is and just go hard. And I do layer it a bit, like there's always at least 2 layers going on at all times, because like I said, I don't practice, I don't play very much, unfortunately, which is something that I'm hoping will change now that the band's getting so much attention, and that we can hopefully start playing shows at some point. So that's basically it, man. Just
but it's definitely
and I only do vocal.
I was going to say you're definitely singing from your diaphragm though, not from your throat. I can hear that. I'd to hear that.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's all from down deep. It's not a voice I'm putting on. I think, that's why other people are saying, oh, do you do this? Like when people talk about vocal fry and all this other stuff, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I push, and that's the sound that comes out. Because that's what comes out from me. That isn't what I sound like. I'm not trying to put on a funny voice or Cookie Monster voice or any shit. It's just I go to yell, and that's what comes out. So it's it's kind of very confronting, because I can still hear bits of my talking voice. How like singers are always weird about hearing their voices back, and I can still hear that. So when it comes time to mix stuff or anything that I've done vocals on, I mixing all the music, no worries, fine. Get to the vocals, and I'm just like, man, I can hear me in this. Just mute the whole bloody thing, like, So it takes me a while to get my head around that and sort of get over that weird thing. I don't know if I'll ever get over it, but I know a lot of singers are like that about hearing their voices back, especially when you can hear your like talking voice in it a little bit. It's kind of it's weird.
It's interesting you say that though, because you've got one of the premier death metal vocals in the country, in my opinion, and the thing about that is that, you could. I mean, I think the key there is that you're versatile, and I know a little bit about that because I've played in many bands myself at the same time. And the thing about versatility is it means that without realising, you're rising to match the performance of the band you're in at the time, and through that and in that way, you're able to find your own voice, if that makes sense. And I think that sounds like what you've been able to do, because you've definitely got. I mean, the thing about your vocal too is, here's another compliment, it's not that easy to compare it to anybody else in market at the moment. Yes, I can hear George Corpse Grinder. Yes, I can hear a bit of Santa Molina from Terrorizer. Yeah, I can hear them, but it's not the whole. It's not you're not the sum of those guys, if that makes sense. There's still a lot of uniqueness to your voice.
Okay. Yeah, that's like I said. Like I don't have a technique like a special voice that I put on or something, you know, because I know, you know, a lot of the guys who do the pig squeals and all the rest of that, they have a special thing that they do to their voice to make it do that. Yeah. And I'm not like that. I don't think about it. I have no preconceived notion of how it's going to come out. I just sing from where it feels comfortable and it feels right, and then I just let the music sort of do it. And plus, I'm also, I don't know if I'm ADHD, but I get bored pretty quick. So just out of sheer boredom, I started doing different, you know, like sometimes I'll do a high part where I usually do a low part and vice versa. I know that's pissed off band members of past bands because I don't do it exactly the same every way, and I mess with the timing of things. It won't always be the exact same timing, and so I don't. Yeah, it's not like a structured thing necessarily. It's just kind of what it feels right at that specific moment in time.
Hey, you didn't do any vocals for the last. You didn't do any vocals for the most recent Abremlin album, did you?
No, fuck no, I wish. That dude's a bloody monster, that guy.
Because he's doubling his... I can't remember the gent's name either, but he's doubling his vocal parts like the D-side thing, you know, the Glenn Benton thing, you know, with the higher vocal with the screeching Danny Filth style vocal.
Yeah.
And I thought that might have been him taking the high and you taking the low.
I definitely do a bit of that as well.
Yeah. Not as much.
Yeah, I do a bit of that from something.
Yeah, sorry, there's a delay.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm a big fan of actually putting like a low with a mid and stuff like that. Like, I think it sounds kind of a bit more unnerving and stuff like that. So yeah, sometimes for that real contrast, I do a high and a low together. But a lot of the time, I'll keep them a little bit closer together. Kind of like, you know, like on a guitar, if you're playing a semitone, it kind of just sounds wrong. You know, two semitones together, it just sounds wrong. You know, and I kind of want to bring a little bit of that into it as well. Like, it just sounds a little bit more gross if they're a little bit closer together. It's musical dissonance,
it technically fits, but it just sounds. It sounds like as though it's about to rip apart at any moment. I get what you're doing. Yeah, I mean, I'm a bassist, you see, as well as a guitarist. But as a bassist, I've always used fifths to try to bring out the colour in music. And I can tell you, in some of the heavier songs, it just sounds nasty. It doesn't sound like it fits, but musically, it technically does. It's. It's. I think a lot of the time, would you say a lot of your outcomes musically come via experimentation, or is it more that you have a very specific vision in mind and you go and achieve that?
When we're writing songs, we usually have we start off with one core idea. We're like, this is the riff this is going to be the core of it, or, you know, the starting point for it, and then we'll just kind of see what just naturally flows, play that riff and see what flows into the next thing just naturally, and then kind of craft it that way. So the songs come together kind of in a very flowing kind of way like that. Vocally, I'll have an idea for the song, and then I'll actually just sit down with it, and I'll actually write the lyrics as I record the song. I'll just have a good idea of what I want to say, but I won't have any phrasing, I won't have any lyrics at all generally, and I just write that right then and there on the spot, which is okay if you take proper notes, and if you don't.
Yeah, but you're not one of those vocalists, you know, those death metal vocalists where it's like da 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 da, you know, that boring shit. You've actually got a lot of variation in your vocal too. So there's something that sort of happens organically, does it?
I don't like doing things in a linear fashion generally with vocals. Like I like to play around with the beat, and I'll, you know, do triplet timing over stuff a lot of the time and whatever. And I very rarely ever come in on the one with a vocal ever, like, you know, on the start of a bar, and that's definitely pissed off past band members, past bands. Yeah. But yeah, so I'll usually try, because the music's already really intense. You know, it's already pummeling your face. My sort of idea is to try and bring some hook to it, put some groove back into it, bring some hook to it, so you kind of remember it a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's basically my approach with it. The only song where that isn't so much of a thing is "Your Suffering Is a Gift." That's the first time that I've really written lyrics that follow a riff like that. I think ever. Like, I just never do that. But that riff just needed that. And, it was like, well, this is really new territory for me. And so even now when I sing that song, it's like, well, I'm not used to singing and following a riff like that. But in that specific case, it actually works really well. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like listening to what you're talking about because my philosophy ultimately is it doesn't matter whether you're a black metal band or a death metal band. You must have an element of swing, like what Hellhammer does for Mayhem, and you must have an element of groove, like what Pat O'Brien brought to Cannibal Corpse. You know, that ebb and that flow that it brings to the music within the measure of the beat. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people who aren't musicians might not understand what we're talking about now, but if you don't bring that in, the listener will lose attention. Like, their attention will wane over the period of the song or the album or the EP or whatever it is you're trying to do. But you guys have got that, because what you are crafting is extremely brutal, and it's extreme metal in it's the essence of it, but it's listenable. Yeah. But it's listenable, and for anybody out there listening that's wanting to start a band, an extreme metal band, you guys have got it down pat. So congratulations again on that front, because far too many. I get sent so much shit, man, you wouldn't believe. And a lot of it I listen to, and believe me, I give it all a chance. I make sure that I do, because I really respect what underground and unsigned metal artists, indie metal artists are doing. But they're either working by themselves or in their room in Oslo, or God knows where they're from, or somewhere in Florida or whatever, or Ohio, and they're just not putting enough emphasis on the swing and on the measure of the beat. They're not understanding that you've got to get people interested by making it a little bit catchy. And I think that's what you were saying. Yeah. I think you can have hooks and make things catchy without making them sound lame. That. Totally. Because obviously you don't want it to sound like a pop song, but then you remember pop songs. So finding that balance. And I just get bored too easily. Doing everything the same all the time would just be super boring. Like, there's just no way that I'd be into that at all. I've done some rigorous assessment and deep diving into Trey from Morbid Angel's guitar playing, to the point where I've interviewed his mother and spoken to her about his playing. Because the very interesting thing about his riffs is that they can be neatly transposed to an acoustic guitar. And that I think is, if I could summarise the essence of why Morbid Angel have been a success. Well, Morbid Angel is Trey, so let's just say Trey. Why Trey's been as successful as what he is, because he gets that. He understands that we're all about the campfire. You know what I mean? We all want to listen to music that makes us feel like as though we're part of a community. And if you can't transpose the riffs neatly to a guitar, I'm not saying you're doing the wrong thing, but that's really what you're aiming for a lot of the time, even if that's not the goal. I hope that makes sense. I probably shouldn't say aiming for it, but I think if you can do that, even if that's not the goal, I think you've accomplished something significant. And I think you guys have done that on this EP here as well.
Yeah, I think even though it's extreme metal, there's still an art to songwriting, regardless of genre. There's still things that make sense. We mess with stuff a lot, like Plague of Superstition and Godless Part 1. We'd chop beats out here and there, and just add little things that make no sense. So we've got the foundations of what would be a pretty normal song, and then we mess with it. So you've still got that foundation there, but then you just kind of make it a bit spicy, a bit interesting. So it's not just like every other song, 4 bars of this, 4 bars of that, next thing. So try to have that classic songwriting, but then still mess with it to make it a bit interesting as well.
Yeah, when I had a chat to Des from Devil Driver and Cold Chamber, I know he's not an extreme metal artist, but look, he's someone who deserves, I think, a lot of respect for what he's been able to accomplish, playing, especially with Devil Driver, playing fairly uncompromising music. He was talking about the fact that a lot of the extreme, or his cohort, so Static X, these sort of people, they sit around a lot of the time having barbecues listening to country music to give you an idea what they're inspired by these days. And that just didn't start these days. That's something that obviously was Leonard Skinner, Bob Dylan. This is all of the shit that we listened to as kids, whether we liked it or not. You had to. It was in supermarkets. It was everywhere. But it's about how you apply your learning from that into extreme metal, and therefore make extreme metal more listenable. Because as you can tell, I'm an extreme metal evangelist. I believe there's an extreme metal band out there for everybody, regardless if you like the genre or not. It's just how I feel about things. People just haven't discovered their extreme metal band yet, if you know what I'm saying. But it's through that comparison that I think it can happen.
Yeah, well, all the reason all those classic bands you mentioned are classic bands is because they could write songs, and I think a lot of metal bands don't write songs. They just chuck a whole bunch of things together, and then when it gets to 3 or 4 minutes, they stop and then they'll do it again. And or they'll write an album with 10 songs that are all trying to do exactly the same thing. I want every song on our releases to have its own identity, to be completely different to the one that comes before it and after it. There's no point in writing 10 of the same song. How boring is that? And I've heard countless death metal albums where that is the case. They're like, this is our formula, and this is what we're doing for the entire album. Except they might have one photo song or something, maybe, or an acoustic interlude or something. But there's so many things out there to explore. Why limit yourself to one form or one kind of riffing or one kind of anything? You could take inspiration from so many places and apply it to extreme metal. Don't be lazy.
I hear people.
Prick at the moment, but you know what I mean, though.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm sure anybody with a brain understands what you're saying, to be honest with you, because you're making a good point, and you're talking about that you need to relate to people through extreme metal, and that's a really good point. That's such a valuable point right there. And the other thing, too, I think, is that, look, you and I, from the same vintage, as I say, I grew up in the 90s, man, and a lot of those bands in the 90s were shit. I'm not talking about the leading lights that we've just spoken about at the beginning of the conversation. I'm talking about the underground shit that I ended up buying on mail order and stuff and taking a punt on because they had a vulgar album cover. And it was exactly what you say. It was just there was no cohesion between the songs. There was no cohesion inside of the songs. And to hear bands these days mimic what some of those shit bands from back in the day, which I'm not going to mention, did, it's crazy to me. It's like, God almighty, I mean, there's Deicide, Cannibal Corpse, Obituary, Morbid Angel, Suffocation, Immolation, all the greats that you can lean into and listen to. What?
Yeah.
I'm not saying copy them, but be inspired by them. You don't have to go too underground and get into some band that 5 people only ever heard of back in the day, therefore nobody's heard of these days, and copy what they're doing. Like that whole underground to out undergrounding each other sort of thing that occasionally happens, and it does. It doesn't happen often, but sometimes stuff does come into my inbox, and it sounds like that. And I'm like, dude, I know you're... okay, I'll mention one band. I know you're trying to sound like Bethlehem. Remember that German band, that Doom blackened band from...
I do. They were fucking out there, those guys.
Mate, they were fucking out there, all right. And I've got to be honest with you, I took a punt on some of their stuff and thought, what the hell is this shit? And I'm sure they're decent. I mean, they could be decent guys. I don't... But the point is, they weren't one of the leading lights. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not heaping shit on them specifically. I'm just saying that using them as an example of a band that I bought back in the day. When this doesn't sound like these guys have got it all together. I know they're into the occult and all the weird shit, but like musically, I'm talking about. I'm just talking strictly about the music here. There was also Pungent Stench had their moments too. I think back in the day, they couldn't make up their mind whether they wanted to be a rock and roll band or a black metal band or a death metal band, and some of those bands like that, to be honest, that's why they're not influential today.
Well, I haven't listened to a hell of a lot of either of those guys, but I definitely know what you mean. I think it's okay to be influenced by all those different things, but try to make it into a sound that works instead of having a rock song, a black metal song, a death metal song. Trying to make those influences sound cohesive as one band. And some bands have definitely nailed that. I suppose the earlier Entombed stuff, kind of.
Yeah, brilliant.
And some of the Swedish stuff definitely blazed the trail there. So blending those other other elements in, but kind of doing it in a way that just worked with, you know, their core values. It wasn't just like, oh, what the hell was that? It just kind of made sense. Yeah, so you can definitely take influences in a way that's not cohesive for sure. But then obviously there's bands that do it really, really well as well. Yeah.
I think the other thing too, mate, is because music has a very low barrier to entry, meaning anybody can buy a guitar and buy a recording interface and then download Pro Tools or Audacity or whatever it is that they choose to record to. It means that not everybody with talent is playing guitar and putting music together, to be honest with you. And I think you've got to be very mindful of that, because some of these guys that are geniuses at social media marketing and internet marketing and getting the word out there, they're not great songwriters.
Yeah.
So there's especially when you're a young fella, like it was, I'm almost really grateful for when we grew up in the 90s, because the cream of the crop rose to the top. You know, we got Deicide weren't buried at the bottom underneath all these shitty bands. They were on Roadrunner and then Earache. They were there. You could find them. You could basically go into HMV and Sanity and all those record stores, all those CD stores back in the day, and buy their shit. Like, it wasn't hard to find their stuff, and I'm grateful for that, I've got to tell you. But you know, like, you could go in there and you knew that if there was a death metal band in there, it was a good one. It had passed the shit test. You know what I mean? Like, you could buy slowly.
A lot harder stuff out there.
Yeah, these days though, there's like as long as you've got an IP address, you're good to go. You know what I mean? Like, you can make music, you can send it out there, and there was a promo agency that I got some stuff from recently, and I came through a third party. Again, I won't say who it is because I don't want to incriminate anybody, but it came through to me, and I listened to a lot of the shit, and I actually sent a message back to the guy who sent it through to me, and I said, mate, what's his other guy doing? Because like the bands that he's doing PR for, just shit sounds like demos. It's like, this is the sort of stuff that you show to your girlfriend when you want to like recruit band members, not what you want to put out there with artwork and do a whole integrated marketing communications campaign, like, which is what's going on. And I know it sounds like I'm being critical, but I'm just sort of imploring people to sort of put some quality into what they're doing, because it is meaningful when they do that. Like, there's no point just spamming the heavy metal community with whatever you can fucking come up with. Like, actually do what you've done and actually, you know, like, just take your time if you need to. You know, like, death metal and heavy metal has proven its worth. It's not going anywhere. You know, like, the whole idea that this is music we were going to stop listening to when we were 25, for me, has gone about 18 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, that's 17, 18 years ago for me. Like, I'm still listening, and I'm still listening to the majority of the same shit and very similar stuff. If anything, I love it more now than I did back then. So it's not going anywhere. So do what you've done. Lean into, you know, creating catchy music within the confines of extreme metal. Get it recorded appropriately. Put some decent production techniques into it. Recruit well. If you're going to play live, get Dave Haley in. These people are out there, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're not as common as everyone would love, but they're definitely talented people all over the place. And you know, you just got to be patient. Like, we could have rushed it and got it out ages ago with a lineup that we weren't happy with, or you know, a lineup that probably wouldn't have presented as well. But you know, we're not at the age now where, you know, we're not going to be famous. We're not going to make millions of dollars. You know, we might as well just put out quality stuff and enjoy the process. You know, that's kind of where we are now. And so, you know, everyone that's in the band now, it's just like, you know, we're just chill people, just, you know, having a laugh, and you know, there's no politics, there's no rubbish, you know, there's no infighting, there's none of that rubbish. You know, it's just and that's. You know, we've all been in bands like that before, and it's horrible. You know, and if you're not making money, why are you doing it? Like, if you're not making money, you're not having fun. You know, you're not getting anything out of it. You know, if we're not going to make money, we might as well have fun. So, yeah. Well,
for you, it's a bit.
Where we're at the moment.
For you, it's more a career, I think, too, because you've got the recording studio. But for most of us, it is a hobby. And I mean, that's being realistic. I mean, most of us do have to have jobs or go to uni, and you go.
Yeah. That's the reason why I do the studio, because I realised pretty early on that being a death metal band and from Adelaide and it being able to pay a mortgage was probably not going to happen. And, you know, me and my missus had our first son quite young. And so it was like, well, I should probably find a way to pay the bills. but I still really wanted to be involved in music, and that's how come the studio happens. Is like, you know, and I've been recording in a few studios down here with my bands, and paid way too much and got, you know, horrible
shitty
sound
results.
and horrible service. Yeah, you know, and we're all on learning curves. Like I know the holes in my game, and I'm always endeavoring to step them up. But it's just like, you know, at least it makes the recording process, you know, fun and engaging, and you know, some of the guys that we went through earlier on in my earlier bands were, you know, the sound guys are just complete pricks. you know, like, no, that's not how it needs to be. This is how it needs to be. It's like, no, have you ever recorded death metal before? Like, you know, this guy records bloody pop stuff, and he's telling me how to EQ a kick drum. I'm like, oh, listen to this CD, you know. And he's like, no, you're an idiot, you know. Basically, it's like, you know, there's got to be a better way than this. So yeah.
Many years ago, about 10 years ago, I worked with Ian Redmond. You probably know him. You know, he does some work with Dicey. Pretty much the go-to guy here in Brisbane and Queensland, really. You know, and just by looking at the way he does things, you can learn a lot. You know, you don't even need to ask questions. Just look at it, at the way he's EQing things on his monitor, and the way that he's listening, and the intervals that, like the way he'll make a decision to make a change, and then he'll listen to it, and then he'll make another change. So it's not just change. It's not just random changes. Does that make sense? It's not just shooting and hoping the best. And you know, he's the sort of guy that can actually record almost any band because of that. You know, I think extreme metal. Yeah. If you can get extreme metal right, I mean, I'm not a sound engineer, okay, so I'll be clear about this. But from my limited understanding and perspective, I can sort of my view is that if you can do extreme metal, you can do almost anything. Do you share that view?
Yep. Because I living in Adelaide, there's maybe 5 or 6 bands that I'd call extreme, and the rest of them are kind of more melodic styles of metal and stuff. But also, I don't necessarily specialize in extreme music as such. I do a lot of acoustic stuff. I record poetry, hip hop, you know, whatever. But, you know, when I get a rock band come in and they've just got like a nice simple drum kit and it's tuned well, and they're in like a normal guitar tuning instead of way, way, way down tuned, man, my job is so much easier. This is how instruments are supposed to sound, you know. Yeah, the drummer can actually hit the drums at the proper velocity every time because they're not trying to play 250 beats a minute, you know. Yeah, they can hit the drum solo, the bass can, you know, the notes can ring out properly, and they're separated from the guitar because it's in, you know, standard tuning, as opposed to we're in G, which is, or drop G, which is, you know, considering we're not a gent band, we don't, you know, do lots of genty kind of sounds. It's a pretty low tuning for most
that's about
metal.
As low as I've ever heard, dude. That's like
there are people. I've recorded bands in F and stuff. Yeah. I've recorded bands in F before, which is, you know, lower again, but they're usually more gent kind of bands, and their riffing is designed for that tuning. The way that we play isn't really designed for that kind of tuning. So getting the bass just to cut through with any kind of notes was a pain in the ass. Because we're not just riding on that low string, you're just, you know, doing those big gent kind of sounds. So yeah, then you add the, you know, the drums and all the rest of the crap on it. But yeah, like I was saying though, get a rock band with normal tuning and stuff, and man, what a cruisy day that is. Like it's awesome. It's just, it's definitely not as stressful as recording death metal, for sure.
Yeah, death metal with all of the low tunings is a nightmare, especially because you've got musicians that don't understand string gauges and tension setups on guitars, and that's just the very beginning. And then they don't use the right gear, so they might not have the right like interface, whether they're using an amp or otherwise. They're just using shit that they've read about online, you know, that old chestnut, which doesn't necessarily apply to their specific set of circumstances. And the other point you've made there is the gent thing. So mad respect for Animals as leaders, Meshuggah, Periphery. But God Almighty, the gent thing wasn't it just a plague there for a period of time? It was like every band was trying to slip in some gentisms, and where they didn't necessarily fit. And a lot of that stuff, when you see Tosin Abasi playing, I think he's slapping the strings, isn't he? He's not actually playing them with a pick a lot of the time. So it's a vastly different technique to just playing the guitar as you would a typical 6-string dinky Jackson.
Yeah. I kind of missed a lot of the gent stuff. It's never really been my bag, so I don't think I've ever really heard animal music, to be honest. But I don't get a lot of time to listen to any music, to be honest. Like I'm in the studio 7 days a week generally, and I'm not listening to a lot of music for fun outside of that. In the morning when I walk the dogs, I'll listen to maybe half an hour of music, and that'll be my fuel for the entire day.
Gotcha.
So if I don't walk the dogs, I don't listen to any other music than what I'm recording. So I've managed to stay pretty well isolated from almost everything that's happened in the outside world for about 15 years. Like I haven't even seen the news for that long. The gent and all the other subgenres that have come and gone in that time, like I wouldn't know, man. Like it just, it happened
go and come back again,
and then
you're not missing much.
But I recorded a full gent band. Yes, I recorded a full gent band last month, I think. They're down tuned to F, like crazy low stuff, and I've never listened to anything like that. But they show me their references and what kind of sounds they're going for, and we just work towards it. I can't be across all genres. Record country with slide guitars and stuff. Like
nice.
I don't know anything about country. Put on a country album that you like the sound of, and we'll work towards it. Like it's impossible for one person to be across all genres. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Enough hours in the day.
Yeah, especially if you own a studio, as you're saying.
Yeah.
You're working in a studio like that, mate. You basically got to be all things to all people. But it sounds like you're very open-minded. You're easy to communicate with, clearly demonstrated per our conversation.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, how did you?
Well, the studio. Okay, go on. Go. Yeah.
How did you find your way as a professional, someone who records bands and in a studio, though? Because it's to your point made earlier, it's a very narrow path. Like, you know what I'm saying? Most people end up giving up and going and working for an insurance company or a car yard or some bullshit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Something meaningless.
Yeah. Yeah, I like I said, I'd had some pretty average experiences recording with my own bands with other people, and so I knew I wanted to do something with music, so that was my main driving force. And I knew that was kind of probably the only way that I was going to be able to make any money out of it. And I don't do well working for other people. Like I am not a 9 to 5. I'm very disciplined. I'm extremely disciplined with my work ethic.
Yeah, neither do I.
But I'm not a get up. Yeah. And but I'm not a get up, go to a job, make some other person rich while I'm earning minimum wage kind of guy. If I'm going to be poor, I'm going to be poor on my terms. And,
good on you.
So so I've had plenty of day jobs. Well, not plenty. I've had a few day jobs, normal day jobs, and I would never last more than a few months at any one of them because it's just not in me. Doing a recording studio, that does specialise in heavier music in Adelaide is not a stable way to make a living by any stretch. Like, bands aren't heaps reliable all the time with money and or bookings and stuff. Like, in the earlier days, it was a nightmare getting money from people and just getting people to, honour the bookings they'd made and stuff. But these days, because I've been around for a fair while now, I don't have any problems with that. And I don't have to really advertise or promote it at all. It just kind of ticks over, which is awesome. Because
isn't that the point,
I can't
though?
be bothered with the whole social media.
I totally hear what you're saying. Isn't that the point, though? Is that like when you start out, you've just got to expect to take a barrage of knocks. Because this is the thing, mate. A lot of people think they can start out and they can apply their expertise straight away, and the money's going to roll in, and well, Bob's your uncle or what have you. Insert cliche here. But the point is that you stuck it out for a long enough period of time. You recognised early on that you couldn't work for other people, and I totally identify with that. Isn't it fucking awful turning up for some arsehole in middle management and making them feel good about their shit job in some corporation in the CBD of Adelaide or Brisbane or Sydney or Melbourne or what have you, or Perth or anywhere. I mean, the point is that you're literally turning up to a cubicle and, you know, you didn't take your 15-minute fucking break on time. How about this? Go fuck yourself. You know what I mean? Like, it's a shit job.
Yeah, exactly.
The customers are going to get served by somebody else anyway. Like, and like all these middle management types. Like, honestly, if there's one role that corporations can do away with, it is middle management. Because here's the tip: every individual, every employee in a large corporation, so assuming the corporation is larger than sort of 3, 4, 5,000 people, like your Commonwealth banks or your Telstras or what have you, you know what you're meant to do. If you don't do it, well then 3 strikes and you're out or something like that, I don't know. But having a middle manager in there to coach you in inverted commas, bullshit. That stuff just does not work. It's all personality based, and it's all based on who you know and not what you know, and it's that sort of stuff is career killing for people. The problem long term is, I think, mate, you've been smart and you figured out the game early on, so you've learnt not to put your mortgage isn't reliant, or your rent isn't reliant, or your kids' school fees aren't relying on these fucking jobs. Excuse my language, but mate, I just talk to so many people who have mild depression, or they hate their lives, or whatever, and a lot of it comes down to the fact that they feel stuck. And they feel stuck because they're working for corporations instead of doing what even I've done it, mate. I've stepped out of Telstra, and I'm at Bond Uni. I'm in my last 4 weeks now talking to you. This is my fifth last week, 4th last week next week, before I go out and start looking for a job as a journalist, hopefully within News Limited, because I'm doing my internship at the Gold Coast Bulletin. But people, mate, and I'm not saying this about me. I'm talking in general terms. But people don't have the balls to do things like that. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like what you've done or what I've done. People are like, oh, well, you know, I need to fucking earn money. I need to pay off that Holden Commodore or that Audi or what have you. It's like, do you? Yeah, you don't. Ditch it. Start again.
Don't buy shit you don't need.
Buy shit you don't need. Stop hanging out with people that want to wear the latest threads and keeping up with the Joneses, and lean into your creativity a bit more.
Yeah, I don't buy into any of that at all, man. Like, if I have to go to the shops, man, I'm not happy at all. Like, consumerism and me aren't great friends, to be honest.
Likewise.
About the only place I go to is Bunnings to buy shit for building or buying plants or something. You know, it's about the only place I go. You know, when I do, something like on the occasion that I've had to go to somewhere like Harbour Town, which is a big outlet thing here in Adelaide. It's insane, and it's just like people go there to spend all of their money, and it just blows my mind. Definitely,
we've got a Harbour Town here.
At all. They work.
We've got the same thing here. Harbour Town's in both places, Adelaide and Gold Coast, and people do the same thing. And I'm like, that's your day out, but buying shit from the Nike outlet store, like, that's what I can't stand, virtue signalling. So let me be clear here: Nike and all their Black Lives Mattering, okay, all their shit is made in sweatshops. You know, and and you buy it from Harbour Town. It's like, really? The irony of the whole cycle of it is just bullshit. And it's like, instead of just stepping out of it and going, you know what? See, again, and I'll make a broader point here when I said there's an extreme metal band for everybody out there. There's also a creative outlet out there for anybody. And a lot of that can turn into a career pursuit. But you've got to give yourself the time and the space to do that. If you don't do that, because I don't think we mature until we're in our 30s and 40s, mate. Our 20s, we don't have a goddamn clue. You know, like, I'm not saying I wasn't clueless in my 20s, but I recognised I was figuring things out. But a lot of people, they you know, they lock themselves into professional circumstances and then build a life around them when they're in their 20s and 30s, and they're stuck. And that kills their creativity and their want to. And that's why I think all these corporations, like the Mercedes-Benzes and those home building companies, they prey on this shit. They know that people are depressed and upset, and what they do is they say their marketing effectively relies on, great, you've got all this money now because you're working really hard, aren't you? How about you buy this piece of shit? You know, and like, I'm not even having a dig at consumer. And I'm not even having a dig at capitalism here. Like, it's up to us. Capitalism is the only system that works, okay? But you've got to be smart. It's like anything. You can't apply dumb principles.
it's what you do with it, really, isn't it? Yeah, it's good to have all these options, but you don't want to be locking yourself into commitments that you probably shouldn't have. I see that a lot. Yeah, people get themselves stuck in situations. Yeah, I just try and avoid all of that kind of thing. Absolutely. Yeah, freaks me out. Yeah.
Well, mate, it's been good to chat. And look, if you're comfortable with everything, I love chats like this because they're broad. We're talking about life, about music, about an album or an EP in your case. Sorry, but if you're comfortable, I want to release this as it is because I think it's very valuable for people to hear the length and breadth of these sort of conversations.
Yeah, no, I'm cool, man. Doesn't bother me. I don't say shit I don't mean generally. So
no, I can tell.
not intentional.
Yeah. No, you're in control, brother. Yeah, I can hear you're in control, and mate, you're bringing the metal to the people, which is helping people, mate. You've got to look at yourself as an essential service. You know what I mean? And I'm not just being facetious when I say that. I mean, without people like yourself recording bands, being creative, and doing what you do, people have got to understand something. Okay, creatives are the great innovators. People might listen to your music and they're inspired to do something which will bring great good to people, and that's just the utilitarian value. The individual value is, mate, there's great entertainment value in what you're doing, and which helps people, brings a serotonin boost. I mean, this is my view on musicians and artists, and
Yeah, well, basically, what is the point of being human if you're not expressing yourself? That's the whole. That's we have that ability to express ourselves, and you see a lot of people wasting that. And it's kind of freaked out, but I don't see any point in existing if you're not expressing something.
No.
And the way we're obviously doing it is through music, but there's just phenomenal artists and creative entities of any persuasion, doing amazing stuff in their chosen fields, and. That's how you judge civilizations by the art.
I agree. Yes,
that they created. Yeah.
Well, it's all that they leave behind, mate. It's actually all that they leave behind, from Egypt to Greece to Rome. Or Rome. You could argue that Rome's structures that they built were a form of art or expression. But in any civilization, mate, that doesn't create, they're doomed. It's as simple as that. They're doomed to history.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We've got a short little life. We might as well, try and leave some mark upon it. However insignificant it may be, record, a couple hundred bands from Adelaide. I feel like I'm doing something of worth still. Even though, it might only be their grandkids that hear it. I still feel like I'm doing something at least.
Well, your contribution, Andy, is not insignificant. Let me assure you. You're doing God's work in my view, doing what you do and bringing the music to the people the way you are, and keeping the faith and managing to eke out a life where you can do that, mate. So congratulations and well done with everything, mate, because the world needs more people like you.
Cheers, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
So what I'll do from here, brother, is. As I say, I'll just edit. I don't do any, there's no editing of the conversation. There's just an intro and outro, and I'll just join the two conversations we've had together. The two, the phone dropped out, so I'll just put them both together, mate. But if you're cool with it, I'll post it, and once that's posted, mate, I'll send it through to you.
Yeah, awesome, cool. Yeah, we'll share it around all over the shop, and thanks very much, man. Much appreciated.
Likewise, mate. Well, look, anytime you got a new release or anything like that, please. I know Dicey, Dicey, and no doubt he'll hit me up when you guys are next got to do a release on. But otherwise, mate, just reach out to me anytime you got something new or interesting happening and you want to have a chat, because you're a great conversation, and I believe in the work you're doing, so no worries.
Cool, cheers, thanks.
No worries, brother. All right, have a great night, and no doubt we'll chat sometime in the future.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Likewise, mate. All right, enjoy your weekend too.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online. That means I'm Andrew Mackay-Smith, because I'm the only one who does this, let's face it. And you've been listening to my conversation with Andy Kite from South Australian outfit Descend To Acheron. Thanks for listening.